The year is 1683. A city that once held 60,000 souls has become a graveyard with a pulse. For 1,000 skeletal defenders still stand on walls that are no longer walls, just piles of rubble held together by dried blood, desperate prayers, and the sheer stubbornness of men who have forgotten how to surrender. They have not eaten real food in 6 weeks. They have been drinking water mixed with sewage because the wells are contaminated with corpses. Their lips are cracked. Their eyes are hollow. Their hands shake when they lift their weapons. And yet they stand. For 62 days, 80,000 Ottoman soldiers have strangled Vienna with siege trenches, artillery bombardments, and underground mines that collapse entire neighborhoods into smoking craters. The greatest military machine the world has ever seen surrounds the city like a python wrapped around a dying rabbit. The mathematics are precise. They are merciless. They permit no hope. The Ottomans lose approximately 200 men per day to disease, skirmishes, and accidents. At that rate, they can maintain this siege for another 8 months without reinforcement. They have food stockpiled. They have powder stockpiled. They have time itself stockpiled. The defenders lose approximately 150 men per day. At that rate, they will reach zero in 26 days. But they do not have 26 days. Beneath Vienna's last standing bastions, Ottoman sappers have spent 3 weeks digging tunnels through the soft limestone foundations. They have packed 2,000 pounds of black powder into chambers carved directly beneath the walls. When those charges ignite, and they will ignite within 72 hours, the walls will not crack. They will not crumble. They will cease to exist. The Grand Vizier has already written his victory letter to the Sultan. He has already divided Vienna's treasures among his officers. He has already selected which churches will become mosques and which palaces will become his personal residences. He has already mentally composed the poetry that will celebrate this conquest for generations. The European kings have already calculated Vienna's fall. Some mourn quietly. Most shrug and return to their own petty conflicts. A few celebrate privately, because a weakened Austria means opportunity for everyone else. Vienna dies within the week. The mathematics permit no other outcome. Except 500 miles to the north, something is moving through mountain passes that should be impassable. 3,000 cavalry knights are riding toward Vienna with wings mounted on their armor. Actual wings, constructed from eagle feathers on wooden frames, designed to catch the wind and produce a screaming howl that sounds like death itself approaching. The sound has no natural equivalent. The human nervous system does not know how to process it. They are led by a 60-year-old king who has ignored every advisor, every mathematician, every voice of reason telling him this mission is suicide. He has pawned his wife's crown jewels to fund this expedition. He has ridden through rain, through mud, through mountain passes that claimed horses and men alike. They have no supply lines behind them. No reinforcements coming after them. No logical reason to believe they can survive the next 48 hours. They are outnumbered 27-1. And they are about to attempt the largest cavalry charge in recorded human history. What happens in the next 6 hours will reverse 150 years of Ottoman conquest. It will determine whether European civilization survives the century or becomes a footnote written in Turkish. It will prove something that no equation has ever been able to calculate. That mathematics bow before men who refuse to read the numbers. This is the story of how 3,000 knights with feathers on their backs rode into legend, and how 80,000 soldiers learned that faith weighs more than steel. Before we ride into this story, I need to ask you something. If this matters to you, if you believe history like this deserves to be remembered, please take 1 second to hit that like button. Leave a comment. Share this with someone who needs to hear what happened on that September afternoon. This channel exists because of people like you. I do not take that for granted. Every like, every comment, every share helps this story reach someone who needs to hear it. Thank you. Now, let us meet the men who bet their souls on a miracle. Jan Sobieski is not born a king. He is born into a world that manufactures killers or victims, with no options in between. The Poland of 1629 is not a nation in any comfortable sense. It is a wound that refuses to close. A bleeding frontier surrounded by empires that smell weakness the way wolves smell wounded deer. To the east, the Russian Tsars dream of swallowing Polish territory whole. Their armies probe the borders constantly, testing for soft spots, waiting for the moment when Poland is too distracted to defend itself. To the south, Ottoman vassal states raid constantly, burning villages, carrying away thousands into slavery, turning the borderlands into a permanent war zone where farmers sleep with weapons beside their beds and children learn to hide before they learn to read. To the north and west, Swedish armies will soon tear through the Commonwealth in what Poles will call the deluge, a catastrophe that kills 1/3 of the population and leaves the survivors wondering if God has abandoned them entirely. This is the crucible that forges Jan Sobieski. Not the perfumed courts of Versailles where nobles debate philosophy over wine. Not the banking houses of Venice where merchants calculate profit margins. Not the salons of Paris where intellectuals discuss abstract concepts of justice and liberty. Sobieski grows up in a land where survival is the first lesson and violence is the second. Where the question is never whether you will fight, but whether you will fight well enough to still be breathing when the sun rises. By age 10, he has witnessed Tatar raids that leave entire communities as smoldering graves. He has hidden in root cellars while horsemen with curved sabers rode through his village searching for captives. He has seen neighbors marched away in chains, women, children, old men, entire families destined for the slave markets of Crimea where human beings are sold like livestock and worked until they die. He has learned that the world contains two kinds of people: those who can defend themselves, and those who disappear into the vast machinery of human cruelty. His father makes the choice for him early. Jan will be a defender. The training begins before his body is ready for it. Horsemanship from age 6, not gentle riding lessons on placid ponies, but combat riding on war horses. Learning to control a half-ton animal with knees alone while both hands wield weapons. Learning to fall from a galloping horse without breaking bones. Learning to remount at full speed while enemies pursue. He falls. He breaks ribs. He dislocates his shoulder twice before his 12th birthday. He climbs back on the horse every time. Saber work begins at age 8. The Polish saber is not a thrusting weapon like Western rapiers, elegant and precise. It is a cutting weapon, curved, weighted for the swing, designed to remove limbs and heads from horseback with brutal efficiency. Young Sobieski practices until his shoulders burn with fire. Then he practices more. Then he practices until he cannot lift his arms. Then he rests for an hour and practices again. By 12, he can split a melon suspended on a rope while riding at full gallop. His timing must be perfect. A fraction of a second early or late means a miss. He does not miss. By 14, the melons are replaced with straw dummies wearing captured Tatar armor. The armor is real. The resistance is real. He learns how steel feels when it parts. By 16, the dummies are replaced with actual Tatars. Border skirmishes. Raid interceptions. The bloody work of defending a frontier that never sleeps. His first kill comes at 17. A border raid. Tatar cavalry trying to escape with captured civilians. Women and children roped together, stumbling behind horses. Jan's squadron intercepts them at a river crossing. The fighting is brief, brutal, and educational. He learns the sound a skull makes when a saber cracks it. Not a clean sound. A wet sound, followed by a softer sound as the body falls. He learns that men scream differently when they are dying than when they are simply wounded. The dying scream has a different pitch. A different desperation. Once you hear it, you never forget it. He learns that his hands do not shake afterward. That last lesson is the most important. Many men can kill in the heat of combat. Fewer can kill and then eat dinner with steady hands. Sobieski can. This does not make him a monster. It makes him a survivor. Over the next 4 decades, Jan Sobieski transforms from survivor to legend. He fights the Tatars so effectively that the Crimean Khan issues standing orders to his raiders. Avoid the Polish commander with the red banner. Do not engage him in open terrain. If you see his cavalry forming, retreat immediately and report his position. Do not attempt heroics. He crushes Cossack rebellions, brutal campaigns through swamps and forests, against enemies who know the terrain better than any map. He learns patience. He learns to wait for the perfect moment. He learns that victory belongs not to the strongest but to the most willing to endure. He holds the line against Swedish invaders during the deluge. Years of apocalyptic warfare that teach him logistics, siege craft, and the mathematics of attrition. He watches Poland bleed. He watches friends die. He watches cities burn. And through it all, he keeps fighting. His masterpiece comes in 1673, at the Battle of Khotin. The Ottomans have invaded Polish territory with 35,000 men, a massive force, equipped with the finest weapons the Sultan's arsenals can produce, commanded by officers who have never known defeat. The Polish army numbers 30,000, but its core is 3,000 winged hussars, the heavy cavalry that Europe whispers about but few have actually faced in open battle. Sobieski studies the Ottoman deployment for 3 days. He identifies the weakness, a slight gap between the center and the right wing, created by the terrain and the overconfidence of the Ottoman commander. He launches the hussars directly into that gap. The impact is apocalyptic. The Ottoman formation does not retreat, it disintegrates. Men who have never fled from any enemy discover what it feels like when 3,000 armored knights crash through their lines with 17-foot lances. 20,000 Ottoman casualties in a single afternoon. The commander killed. The artillery captured. The survivors scattered across 3 provinces, their cohesion destroyed so completely that it takes months to reassemble them into functional units. When news reaches Warsaw, the Polish nobles do something unprecedented. They elect Sobieski king by acclamation. Not inheritance. Not political maneuvering. Not backroom deals and bribery. Pure military reputation transformed into a crown. But here is what makes Sobieski dangerous in a way his enemies will never understand. He believes. Not the performative Christianity of kings who invoke God for political convenience and forget him between Sundays. Not the casual faith of men who pray when they want something and ignore the divine the rest of the time. Something deeper. Something that burns in the marrow and speaks in the silence. Jan Sobieski reads scripture the way other commanders read tactical manuals. Daily, intensely, searching for guidance. He prays before battles. He prays after battles. He prays when no one is watching, which is the only kind of prayer that counts. When he kills, he asks forgiveness. When he survives, he gives thanks. When he faces impossible odds, he does not calculate probability. He asks God what is required of him, and then he does it. His letters to his wife, Maria Casimir, reveal a man conducting a lifelong conversation with the divine. They are love letters, yes, passionate and devoted, but they are also spiritual journals. I have buried men I loved. I have killed men who were perhaps no worse than myself. I have seen horrors that visit my sleep and refuse to leave. And through all of it, I have felt a hand guiding my sword that is not my own. If I die tomorrow, it will be because God has finally found better use for my soul elsewhere. Until then, I ride where he points me. This is the man who receives word that Vienna is dying. This is the man whose advisors present the mathematics of impossibility and expect him to accept them. This is the man who pawns his wife's crown jewels, symbols of royal dignity and national pride, to buy powder and provisions for a campaign that every rational calculation says will fail. If we lose these, Maria says, holding the jewels before they are taken away, we lose our dignity. If we lose Vienna, Sobieski answers, we lose our civilization. Dignity can be repurchased. Souls cannot. He gathers his hussars. He rides south. Now meet the man who is keeping Vienna alive long enough for Sobieski to arrive. Count Ernst Rudiger von Starhemberg. If Sobieski is faith made flesh, Starhemberg is duty made bone. He does not believe in miracles. He does not believe in divine intervention. He does not believe in anything that cannot be measured, counted, rationed, or calculated. He believes in walls, powder, rotation schedules, the mathematics of how many men he can lose each day without the defense collapsing entirely. When Emperor Leopold flees Vienna, abandoning his capital, his people, his responsibility, loading his treasury into carriages and disappearing down the western road like a coward in expensive clothing, Starhemberg watches the imperial carriage disappear and says nothing. What is there to say? The emperor is gone. The garrison remains. The civilians remain. 60,000 people who cannot flee because the siege lines are already closing around them. Someone must look 80,000 Ottomans in the eye and refuse to blink. Starhemberg decides it will be him. He inherits 15,000 defenders and 60,000 civilians. By September, disease, starvation, and Ottoman attacks reduce those numbers to 4,000 soldiers capable of fighting and 40,000 civilians slowly starving to death. Every morning, he walks the walls. He counts the breaches. He calculates the rate of collapse. He estimates how many hours the city has left. And every morning, he returns to his command post and issues orders as if those hours will somehow stretch into eternity. His journal entries are the words of someone who has accepted death but refuses to stop working. We cannot win. We will not be relieved. We cannot survive the month. And yet we will not yield. Let the histories record that Vienna died standing. If the Ottomans want this city, they will climb over our corpses to claim it. We will not open the gates. We will not negotiate. We will not beg. We will give them nothing except our lives, and those they must earn with their own blood. When Ottoman messengers arrive with surrender demands, promises of mercy, safe passage, spared lives if the gates open peacefully, Starhemberg sends them back with 3 words. Come take it. 2 men. One rides toward certain death because he believes God demands it. One stands in certain death because duty permits nothing else. They have never met. They have never exchanged a single letter. They do not know each other's names. They will save each other. And together, they will save a world that does not deserve to be saved. To understand the terror pressing on Vienna's walls, you must first understand what Vienna faces. Not an army. An empire made flesh. The physical manifestation of 2 centuries of unstoppable conquest, wrapped in silk banners and armed with the most advanced military technology the world has ever produced. The Ottoman Empire of 1683 controls more territory than Rome at its height. More land than Alexander ever conquered. More people than any single political entity in human history up to this moment. 3 continents bow to the Sultan's command. His treasury holds wealth that European kings cannot imagine. Gold flowing in from Egypt, silk from Persia, slaves from Africa, tribute from 30 vassal states that pay simply for the privilege of not being conquered. His arsenals produce weapons that European craftsmen cannot replicate. His shipyards launch fleets that make the Mediterranean an Ottoman lake. And his armies have not lost a major campaign in 200 years. Let me give you the chain of victories that makes Vienna's position clear. Let me show you the cascade that has brought Europe to this moment. 1453. Constantinople falls. The thousand-year Byzantine Empire, heir to Rome itself, guardian of Christianity in the East, ends in a single bloody afternoon. The greatest Christian city east of Rome becomes Istanbul. The Hagia Sophia, where emperors have been crowned for a millennium, becomes a mosque. The shockwave of that fall reverberates through every throne room in Europe. If Constantinople can fall, anything can fall. 1521. Belgrade falls. The gateway to Central Europe opens. The fortress that has guarded the Danube for centuries becomes an Ottoman garrison. The road to Vienna is now clear of major obstacles. 1526. Mohawks. The Hungarian army, 20,000 knights and infantry, the pride of Central European military power, meets the Ottoman force in open battle. The combat lasts 2 hours. The Hungarian army is annihilated. The king dies fleeing the field, drowned in a swamp while trying to escape. Hungary becomes an Ottoman possession. 1529. First Siege of Vienna. Suleiman the Magnificent brings 120,000 men, the largest army Europe has ever seen assembled against a single target. The walls are weak. The defenders are few. The outcome seems written in blood before a single shot is fired. But something unexpected happens. The rains come. The snows follow early. Disease rips through the Ottoman camp. Suleiman, the lawgiver, the shadow of God on earth, is forced to retreat. Not defeated. Delayed. He tells his generals the truth that will echo through the next 154 years. Vienna is unfinished business. Vienna is the key. Vienna is the golden apple. And apples, once desired, are never forgotten. 1541. Buda falls. The Hungarian capital flies Ottoman flags for the first time in its history. The occupation will last 145 years. 1571. Cyprus falls. The Venetians, who consider themselves masters of the Mediterranean, watch helplessly as Ottoman armies claim their richest colony. The defenders are massacred. The Venetian commander is flayed alive, his skin stuffed with straw and paraded through Ottoman cities. Every single fortress that seemed impregnable has fallen. Every single army that seemed invincible has been broken. Every single time European commanders have calculated that this wall will hold or this army will stop them, they have been wrong. This is the weight pressing on Vienna. Not just 80,000 soldiers. 2 centuries of proof that resistance is mathematically futile. The man commanding this weight is Kara Mustafa Pasha, Grand Vizier of the Ottoman Empire. Second in power only to Sultan Mehmed for himself. The most powerful non-royal figure in the world. And perhaps the most dangerous combination in military history. A brilliant strategist intoxicated by his own brilliance. Kara Mustafa does not believe in God's intervention. He believes in numbers. He believes in logistics. He believes in the cold mathematics that have never failed him. His engineers report that Vienna's medieval walls cannot withstand Ottoman mining techniques. The foundations are limestone, soft enough to excavate, brittle enough to crack when powder detonates beneath them. His engineers have reduced stronger fortresses with smaller armies. Vienna's walls are obsolete. They were built to resist arrows and scaling ladders, not the bronze cannons and underground explosives that the Ottomans bring. His quartermasters report that his supply lines can sustain the siege for 8 months. Grain from Hungary, meat from the Balkans, powder from the imperial arsenals. Everything flows to Vienna like blood to a beating heart. His army will not starve. His army will not run out of ammunition. His army has time. His intelligence officers report that no European relief force can possibly assemble in time. The Germans are squabbling over religion and territory. The French are secretly allied with the Ottomans. Yes, the most Christian king of France negotiates with Muslims against fellow Christians. The Spanish are irrelevant, their empire a hollow shell. The Italians care only for money. The Poles are too far away and too broke. Every variable confirms the same conclusion. Vienna falls. Vienna must fall. Vienna has no alternative but to fall. He calculates the plunder with the precision of a merchant. Vienna's treasury holds approximately 2 million ducats in gold and silver. The churches contain sacred objects worth another million. Golden chalices, jeweled reliquaries, centuries of accumulated wealth. The merchant houses, the noble estates, the workshops of master craftsmen. Another 3 million in goods and materials. Total, roughly 6 million ducats. Enough to finance 3 more campaigns. Enough to buy the favor of any European power. Enough to make Kara Mustafa wealthy beyond the dreams of kings. He dines like a conqueror already victorious. Lamb prepared with spices from 3 continents. Sherbet cooled with ice carried by relay riders from the Carpathian Mountains. A luxury so expensive that European nobles cannot afford it. Fresh fruit delivered daily from Hungarian orchards. He invites European ambassadors to witness the siege as entertainment. He seats them in comfortable pavilions with clear sight lines to Vienna's crumbling walls. He serves them delicacies while artillery pounds the city into rubble. Watch history, he tells them with a smile that never reaches his eyes. When Vienna falls, I will permit you to send word to your masters. They should know what awaits any nation that opposes the Sultan's will. The ambassadors nod. They smile nervously. They do not argue, because they have done the mathematics too, and the mathematics say Mustafa is right. But here is the horror that makes Vienna's position truly hopeless. Europe does not care. King Louis XIV of France, the Sun King, the most powerful monarch in Christendom, ruler of the wealthiest nation in Europe, is actively working against Vienna's relief. He has ambassadors in Constantinople. He trades with the Ottomans. He sees Austrian weakness as French opportunity. If Vienna falls, Louis can seize territories along the Rhine while his Habsburg rivals are too busy surviving to resist. Some historians believe Louis actually coordinated the timing with Mustafa. We cannot prove it, but the coincidence of French aggression and Ottoman invasion is suspicious at minimum. Louis launches military operations on the Rhine just as the Ottomans march toward Vienna, forcing the Austrians to divide their attention. The most Christian king helps the enemies of Christendom. This is Europe in 1683. The Protestant German states hesitate to aid Catholic Austria. Why should Lutheran princes save a Habsburg emperor who spent decades trying to suppress their faith? Leopold I has never shown Protestants respect or tolerance. He has funded counter-Reformation armies. He has pressured Protestant states to convert. He has treated Protestant subjects as second-class citizens. Now he begs for help. Let him beg longer. Let Austria burn a little. Perhaps a humbled emperor will grant more autonomy. Perhaps a desperate Habsburg will finally recognize Protestant rights. Perhaps the Catholics will learn what it feels like when no one comes to save them. The calculations are cynical. They are also understandable given the history. The 30 Years' War ended only 35 years earlier. That apocalyptic conflict killed 8 million people, 1/3 of the German population erased from existence. Catholic armies spent 30 years butchering Protestant civilians. Protestant armies spent 30 years butchering Catholic civilians. Cities were destroyed. Regions were depopulated. The scars have not healed. Now the Pope asks them to unite. Now the Pope expects them to forget. The hatred runs too deep. The graves are too fresh. The calculations of what have they ever done for us outweigh the calculations of what will happen if Vienna falls. Spain is a hollow shell. The empire that once dominated Europe has been bleeding wealth and power for a century. The gold of the Americas has been squandered on failed wars. The Armada was destroyed generations ago. The Spanish infantry that once terrified the world has become a memory. Spain sends prayers. Spain sends nothing else. The Italian city-states care only for trade. Venice is rebuilding from previous Ottoman wars. Genoa is focused on banking. Florence is focused on art. Milan is focused on manufacturing. Vienna is an Austrian problem. Let the Austrians solve it. England is an island obsessed with domestic concerns. The Stuarts are fighting with Parliament. Catholics are fighting with Protestants. Everyone is fighting with everyone. The continent can burn. The Channel will protect England. Only one European leader truly understands what Vienna's fall will mean. Pope Innocent XI. He is old. He is frail. His health is failing. But his eyes still burn with understanding. If Vienna falls, the gate opens. If the gate opens, the flood pours through. Germany becomes a tributary or a battlefield. Italy becomes the next target. Rome itself, the seat of the Catholic faith, becomes an Ottoman objective. The Pope has read history. He knows that the Ottomans do not stop until they are stopped. He sends letters to every crowned head in Europe. He pleads, cajoles, threatens spiritual consequences. He empties the papal treasury, literally ships gold to Poland, to Bavaria, to any nation that will send soldiers. Most ignore him. Some laugh. A few quietly take the gold and send nothing in return. Christendom is so fractured, so bitter, so consumed by internal hatred that it cannot recognize an external threat until the threat is standing on its doorstep. Inside Vienna, the mathematics are measured in corpses. July 14th. The siege begins officially. Ottoman trenches encircle the city. The noose begins to tighten. July 23rd. First major mine explosion. The Lobel bastion partially collapses. 200 defenders die in seconds, buried beneath stone, burned by powder, crushed by rubble. Starhemberg fills the breach with debris and bodies. There is no time to mourn. There is only time to build another wall. August 6th. Second mine explosion. The Berg bastion cracks. Another 150 dead. The food situation becomes critical. Horse meat becomes a luxury. Citizens who once complained about the quality of bread now fight over scraps of horse intestine. August 12th. Ottoman artillery destroys the main water conduit. The wells must now supply everything. The wells are not enough. Water is rationed. Thirst becomes a constant companion. August 25th. Rats become the primary protein source. Citizens pay silver coins for a single rat. Those who cannot pay go hungry. Children cry from empty bellies. Old people sit in corners and wait to die. September 2nd. Dysentery epidemic reaches crisis levels. The very young die first, their bodies too small to withstand the dehydration. Then the very old. Mass graves are dug because there is no strength for individual burials. No time for proper funerals. No energy for grief. September 8th. The garrison is down to 4,000 effective soldiers. Effective means men who can stand and hold a weapon. It does not mean men who can fight with strength. It does not mean men who can survive another assault. Starhemberg walks the walls each morning. He counts the remaining soldiers. He counts the remaining food. He counts the remaining ammunition. The mathematics converge towards zero. Beneath his feet, Ottoman engineers are packing the final mine chambers. 2,000 pounds of black powder distributed across 3 shafts, positioned beneath the last major defensive walls. When those charges detonate, and they will detonate within 72 hours, there will be no wall left. The Janissaries will pour through the gaps like water through a shattered dam. The garrison will be overrun in hours. The civilians will be killed or enslaved. Vienna will cease to exist. Starhemberg knows this. He has known it for weeks. He writes in his journal with handwriting that remains steady despite everything. We are ghosts defending a grave. Yet we will not yield. Not because we hope for rescue. Not because we believe in miracles. We will not yield because some things are more important than survival. If the Ottomans want Vienna, they will climb over our corpses to take it. We will not open the gates. We will not negotiate. We will give them nothing except our lives, and those they must earn with their own blood. He does not know that 500 miles north, 3,000 winged knights are riding through mountain passes. He does not know that a 60-year-old king has pawned his wife's jewels for this mission. He does not know that mathematics are about to bow before faith. He knows only duty. And duty says, hold the walls. Now we must understand what is riding toward Vienna. Not cavalry. Engineered killing instruments. The most lethal heavy cavalry unit in human history, optimized through 2 centuries of development for exactly one purpose: breaking enemy formations through shock and terror. The Polish winged hussar is not simply a man on a horse with weapons. It is an integrated weapons platform. Horse, rider, armor, lance, and wings working together as a single mechanism of destruction. Every component has been refined through generations of warfare. Every element serves a specific lethal purpose. Let me break down the mathematics. The lance. Each hussar carries a copia, a specialized lance unlike anything else in European warfare. Length: 17 to 19 feet. Nearly 6 meters of reach that outranges any other cavalry weapon in existence. A hussar can strike an enemy from beyond saber range. He can strike before the enemy can strike back. Construction. Hollow core. This is critical engineering. A solid wooden lance of that length would weigh 15 to 20 pounds. Far too heavy to couch under one arm, far too fatiguing for extended combat. The hollow construction reduces weight to approximately 8 pounds while maintaining structural rigidity. The wood is seasoned ash, selected for its combination of flexibility and strength. Each lance requires 2 years of seasoning before it can be shaped. The wood must be dried slowly, naturally, until the moisture content reaches exactly the right level. Too wet and it will warp. Too dry and it will shatter before impact. The craftsmanship is meticulous. A poorly made copia will shatter before impact, wasting the charge and potentially killing the rider. A well-made copia will shatter on impact, but only after delivering its full payload of kinetic energy into the target. The tip is hardened steel, designed not for slicing but for penetration. It concentrates force onto a contact area of approximately 2 square inches. Now for the physics. This is where the mathematics become terrifying. A hussar warhorse weighs approximately 1,200 pounds. A fully armored hussar weighs another 200 pounds. Combined mass, 1,400 pounds, or roughly 640 kilograms. At full gallop, approximately 25 miles per hour, or 11 meters per second, the combined momentum is approximately 7,000 kilogram-meters per second. When that momentum concentrates through a lance tip onto a 2 square inch contact area, the impact pressure exceeds 15,000 pounds per square inch. For reference, that is greater than the bite force of a saltwater crocodile. It is greater than the impact of a sledgehammer swung by a professional blacksmith. It is sufficient to punch through a 1/4 inch of solid steel plate. Ottoman Sipahi cavalry typically wear chainmail reinforced with small plates. Maximum protection, equivalent to roughly 1/8 inch of steel at the strongest points. Most of the body is protected by even less. The mathematics are conclusive. No armor carried by any Ottoman soldier in 1683 can stop a hussar lance at full charge. A hussar at full gallop does not wound his target. He erases him. The lance punches through the body, through the armor, often through the horse behind. The hollow wood absorbs the impact by shattering, and in that shattering, all kinetic energy transfers to the target. The target does not fall off his horse wounded. The target ceases to be a functional human being. The armor. Hussar plate is not standard European armor. It is evolved specifically for cavalry combat through 2 centuries of trial, error, and battlefield refinement. Key features. The breastplate is curved, not for aesthetics, but for deflection. A lance strike hitting at an angle slides off rather than penetrating. The curve is calculated mathematically to deflect impacts from the most common attack angles in cavalry versus cavalry combat. This is not guesswork. This is the accumulated knowledge of generations of armorers watching what kills riders and adjusting accordingly. The shoulders feature articulated pauldrons that allow full overhead saber swings while still protecting the joint. This is critical because the secondary weapon, after lances shatter, is the saber. A hussar must be able to raise his arm fully overhead to deliver a killing cut. The armor permits this while still stopping enemy blades. The helmet is an open-faced design. This sacrifices some protection for visibility and breathing. Hussars need to see the battlefield clearly at high speed. They must identify targets, track terrain, maintain formation. They need to breathe heavily during sustained combat. Oxygen becomes critical when the body is working at maximum capacity. A closed helmet would create fatal blind spots and cause exhaustion. Each suit costs more than a prosperous merchant family earns in a decade. Some noble families have bankrupted themselves outfitting a single son for hussar service. The armor is not merely equipment. It is inheritance, reputation, and family honor forged into steel. The man inside has trained since childhood. He has learned to ride before he could walk steadily. Placed on horseback at age 3, taught balance and control before he understood words. He has practiced lance work until the copia feels lighter than a wooden spoon. Thousands of hours of repetition, muscles trained to hold the weapon steady at full gallop. He has sparred with sabers until his reactions are automatic. The blade moves before conscious thought, intercepting attacks and delivering counters through pure muscle memory. He has bled. He has killed. He has watched friends die beside him. By the time a hussar reaches his first major battle, he has approximately 15,000 hours of combined training. For reference, professional expertise in most fields requires approximately 10,000 hours. A concert pianist, a master surgeon, a world-class athlete. A hussar exceeds this threshold. He is not a soldier. He is a weapons platform that happens to have a heartbeat. The wings. This is what separates the hussars from every other cavalry unit in history. Wooden frames mounted on the back of the saddle or the backplate of armor. Height: 3 to 4 feet above the rider's head. Span: approximately 2 feet wide at the widest point. Covered in eagle feathers, hundreds of them, selected for uniformity and attached individually by skilled craftsmen. The feathers must be arranged precisely. The angle must be exact. The construction takes weeks. They look ceremonial. They look decorative. They look like the vanity edition of warriors who care more about appearance than function. They are nothing of the kind. At speed, the feathers catch the wind and begin to vibrate. The wooden frames resonate with this vibration, amplifying it. The combined effect produces a sound, a high-pitched whistling scream that rises in pitch and volume as speed increases. At walking pace, the sound is barely noticeable. At trot, it becomes a low whistle. At canter, it becomes a moan. At full gallop, a single hussar's wings produce a sound of approximately 85 decibels, equivalent to standing next to a motorcycle engine. Now multiply by 3,000. 3,000 wings, all vibrating at slightly different frequencies due to minor construction variations, create a wall of sound unlike anything in natural experience. The human ear cannot process it as a coherent noise. The brain cannot categorize it. It registers as roar, as scream, as something fundamentally wrong. The psychological effect is devastating. Humans have evolved threat detection systems over millions of years. These systems respond to certain stimuli with involuntary fear responses, increased heart rate, adrenaline surge, pupil dilation, and most critically, the instinct to flee. The sound of the wings triggers these responses. Not consciously, not rationally. At the primal level, beneath training, beneath discipline, beneath courage. The nervous system hears the wings and screams one message: danger approaching. Horses are even more susceptible. They are prey animals with acute hearing evolved to detect predators. The screaming of the wings reads to their nervous systems as predator approaching. Something large, something fast, something that intends to kill. Untrained horses panic. They throw their riders. They run. Even trained war horses become difficult to control. They stamp. They shy. They require constant management at exactly the moment their riders need to focus on combat. The wings do not make the hussars better fighters. They make everyone fighting against them worse. The horse. The Polish cavalry horse is not a regular mount. It is a purpose-bred weapon system developed over centuries of selective breeding. The breed combines Eastern Arabian bloodlines for endurance, heat tolerance, and intelligence, with heavier European stock for weight, power, and the ability to carry armored riders at speed. The result is an animal that weighs 1,100 to 1,300 pounds, stands 16 to 17 hands tall, and can maintain a gallop for distances that would kill lighter horses. Training begins at age 2. The horse learns to ignore loud noises, gunfire, explosions, the screaming of men. It learns to ignore sudden movements, enemies appearing, weapons swinging, bodies falling. It learns to ignore the smell of blood, the copper scent that makes untrained horses shy and panic. It learns to respond to knee pressure rather than reins, freeing the rider's hands for lance and saber. A squeeze of the left knee means turn right. A squeeze of the right knee means turn left. Both knees mean charge forward regardless of what lies ahead. It learns to charge directly at enemy formations without flinching. This is the hardest training. Every instinct screams at the horse to avoid the mass of screaming humans with sharp objects. The training overrides instinct with obedience. By the time a cavalry horse reaches battle readiness at age 5, it has been desensitized to everything except the signals from its rider. The bond between hussar and horse is closer than many human relationships. Some hussars sleep in their stables. Some mourn dead horses more than dead comrades. This is not sentiment. This is practicality. A hussar without his trained horse is a man in expensive armor standing in a field. A hussar with his trained horse is a weapon capable of killing dozens. Now understand the terrain. Kahlenberg is a ridgeline northwest of Vienna, rising approximately 1,500 feet above the Danube basin. The slopes are covered with vineyards, orchards, and mixed forest. The gradient varies but averages approximately 15 degrees. For infantry, this terrain is defensive advantage. Attackers must climb uphill, exposed to fire, exhausted before they reach the enemy. Defenders hold the high ground and the psychological advantage. For cavalry charging downhill, it is a launch ramp. On level ground, a heavy cavalry horse requires approximately 200 yards to reach full gallop. The acceleration phase is gradual, building speed as the horse's muscles warm and the rider establishes rhythm. On a 15-degree downhill slope, gravitational acceleration supplements muscular acceleration. The horse reaches full speed faster, approximately 120 yards instead of 200. At the bottom of the slope, the cavalry is moving approximately 15% faster than they could achieve on flat ground, and they achieve that speed with less effort from the horses, preserving energy for the combat to come. The kinetic energy at impact scales with the square of velocity. 15% more speed equals 32% more impact energy. The Ottomans have positioned their camp for siege operations. Their trenches face Vienna. Their artillery faces Vienna. Their defensive preparations assume the threat comes from the city, a desperate sally by the garrison that must be contained and crushed. They have not fortified against attack from the north because no rational commander would bring an army over the mountains, through the forests, in time to matter. Sobieski is not a rational commander. He is a man who believes God is guiding his lance. On the night of September 11th, the Allied army enters the Vienna woods. 27,000 men. 18,000 cavalry. Moving through darkness with no torches, no drums, no noise above a whisper. The horses' hooves are wrapped in cloth to muffle sound. The soldiers do not speak. Officers communicate through hand signals. The entire army becomes a ghost, flowing through the forest toward the ridge. Scouts map Ottoman positions. Officers receive their assignments. Cavalry units are designated their lanes of attack, sectors of the slope they will descend, targets they will strike, rally points if the charge fails. At dawn on September 12th, the commanders climb to the summit and look down. The Ottoman camp fills the entire Vienna basin. Thousands of tents in geometric patterns. Artillery parks with hundreds of guns. Cavalry reserves numbering in the tens of thousands. Infantry formations that stretch to the horizon. 80,000 men. Perhaps the largest army any of these commanders have ever seen assembled in one place. Duke Charles of Lorraine, commanding the Austrian forces, studies the positions. He begins to speak about flanking maneuvers, about probing attacks, about waiting for better intelligence. Sobieski interrupts. We attack at noon. The Hussars will form the center. The German cavalry will take the wings. Infantry will follow to hold what we take. Charles starts to object. The numbers. The numbers favor us, Sobieski says. His voice is calm. Absolute. God has arranged this battlefield. The slope is his gift. The enemy's blindness is his gift. Our presence here is his gift. We do not waste divine gifts by hesitating. He looks at the assembled commanders. Germans, Austrians, Poles, Saxons, Bavarians. Men who have spent lifetimes fighting each other now standing together on a mountainside. Make your peace with heaven, gentlemen. By nightfall, we will either dine in Vienna or sup with our Lord. September 12, 1683. The day the mathematics break. 4 a.m. The Allied army receives Mass on the mountainside. Priests move between formations, offering communion, hearing final confessions. Men who have not prayed in years find themselves on their knees in the pre-dawn darkness, whispering words they thought they had forgotten. The Hussars pray together, 3,000 voices murmuring Latin phrases as the sky lightens in the east. They pray for victory. They pray for courage. They pray for the souls of the enemies they are about to kill. Sobieski kneels longer than most. When he rises, his face is calm. Whatever fear existed has been placed in God's hands. Whatever doubt existed has been answered. He has made his peace with the divine. Now he will make war with men. 8 a.m. The infantry begins its descent. Austrian and German foot soldiers picking their way down the slopes, through the vineyards, toward the Ottoman outer positions. The first contact is messy. Ottoman Janissary outposts spot the movement and sound alarms. Muskets bark in the morning air. Skirmishers exchange fire at 200 yards. Men fall on both sides, the first blood of the day, but far from the last. But the terrain makes Ottoman response difficult. Their main camp is positioned for siege, not defense. The trenches face the wrong direction. The artillery is aimed at Vienna, Not at Kahlenberg. Redeploying guns takes hours. Forming proper defensive lines takes hours. They do not have hours. For 3 hours, the infantry grinds forward. Every vineyard terrace becomes a battlefield. Every stone wall becomes a position to take and hold and die for. The fighting is close, desperate, medieval in its brutality despite the gunpowder and shot. The Ottomans fall back slowly, not routing, not panicking, but trading ground for time. This is correct doctrine. Delay the attack. Bleed the attackers. Let the main army prepare its response. Kara Mustafa receives reports and feels no alarm. Infantry attacks? Expected. Let them come. His army outnumbers them 3-1. By the time the Christians break through his screen, they will be exhausted, bloodied, depleted. Their formations will be ragged. Their momentum will be spent. Then his reserves will crush them. He orders sherbet. He awaits victory. He does not look at the ridgeline. 11:30 a.m. On the Kahlenberg Ridge, something begins to move. The hussars mount. This is not a rush. This is ceremony. Each knight checks his armor one final time, running gauntlet hands over buckles and straps. Each knight inspects his lance for cracks, for warping, for any flaw that might cause failure at the moment of impact. Each knight adjusts his wings until the feathers sit perfectly. They have done this before battle 100 times. But they have never done it with an entire civilization watching. Behind the hussars, 15,000 German and Austrian cavalry form into their designated positions. Lighter cavalry, cuirassiers, dragoons, mounted infantry, arranged in waves that will follow the hussar spearhead. The formation is not a line. It is a massive wedge, half a mile wide at the base, narrowing to the killing point where the Polish knights wait. An arrowhead of steel and horseflesh aimed at the heart of the Ottoman army. Noon. Sobieski draws his saber. The blade catches the light, flashing silver in the September sun. He holds it high so every man in the formation can see. For a moment, nothing moves. 18,000 men hold their breath. 18,000 horses stand still. The only sound is the wind through the grass. Then he brings the saber down, and the mountain begins to move. They start at a walk. 18,000 horses stepping forward together, hooves striking earth in a rhythm that pulses through the ground itself. The sound is not loud yet, just a low rumble, like distant thunder on a clear day. The Ottomans hear it before they understand it. Sentries on the forward positions squint at the mountain. Something is moving up there. Something large. The sunlight is catching. Metal? Wings. What kind of banners are those? Reports begin flowing toward Mustafa's pavilion. But the reports are confused. Conflicting. No one is certain what they are seeing. The distance is too great. The formations too strange. Nothing in Ottoman military experience has prepared them for what is coming. The walk becomes a trot. The rumble becomes a continuous vibration, something felt in the bones, in the teeth, in the primal parts of the brain that remember what it meant when the earth shook. The horse's breathing synchronizes into a massive exhalation, 18,000 animals working together like a single organism. The wings begin to catch the wind. A whisper at first. A soft sound that could be mistaken for branches moving, for birds calling, for anything natural. Then a moan. Something lower, more sustained. Then something higher, a keening sound that doesn't belong to any creature the Ottoman soldiers have ever heard. The Ottoman cavalry reserves, 20,000 Sipahis held back from the infantry fighting, begin to form defensive positions. Their officers shout orders. Form up. Dress the lines. Prepare to receive cavalry. They have faced cavalry before. They have broken cavalry before. The Sipahis are the finest horsemen of the East, trained since childhood, blooded in campaigns across 3 continents. They have killed Persians, Egyptians, Hungarians, Venetians. They have never been defeated in a major cavalry engagement. They have never heard the wings. The trot becomes a canter. 18,000 cavalry accelerating downhill. The gravitational assist adding speed that flat-ground charges cannot achieve. The formation tightens as the pace increases, horses drawing closer together, lances lowering toward the killing position. The rumble becomes a roar. The lances come down. 3,000 steel points lowering as one, like a forest of death tilting toward the earth. 17 feet of hollow ash tipped with hardened steel. 3,000 weapons creating a wall half a mile wide. Behind them, the German cavalry draws sabers. They will follow through whatever the hussars break. From the Ottoman perspective, this is what approaching annihilation looks like. A wall of steel points extending across the entire width of the valley. No gaps. No weak spots. No space to maneuver through. A mass of horses so dense that the ground beneath them has become invisible. 18,000 animals moving as one creature, their hooves creating a sound like continuous thunder. And above it all, the wings. Thousands of wings catching wind, vibrating, screaming. The sound is now unbearable. Not just loud, wrong. The human nervous system recognizes it as threat before the conscious mind can process what it is hearing. Hearts race. Hands tremble. Horses stamp and try to turn. The Sipahis have formed their line. They have their sabers drawn. Their officers are shouting encouragement, reminding them of victories, invoking Allah, promising glory. But their horses are stamping nervously, fighting the reins. Their hands are trembling on their weapons. Their hearts are beating too fast, pumping adrenaline that screams one message: run. They are professionals. They will not break. They cannot possibly break. The canter becomes a gallop. The final acceleration. Horses at maximum speed. Riders leaning forward in their saddles, lances locked under their arms, weight balanced for impact. The wings are howling now. Not screaming, howling. 3,000 voices of wind-torn feathers creating a wall of sound that breaks something in the minds of everyone who hears it. The sound does not have a natural equivalent. The brain has no category for it. It registers as wrongness itself. The Sipahis hold their line. Barely. The horses are panicking beneath them, but the riders force control through pure will. Through training. Through the knowledge that they have never broken, never fled, never failed. The gap closes. 500 yards. The lances are visible now. Not just a wall, but individual points. Each one aimed at a specific target. Each one carrying enough momentum to punch through a horse. 300 yards. The faces of the hussars are visible now. Not screaming. Not grimacing. Calm. Focused. The expressions of men who have done this before and know exactly what is coming. 100 yards. The horse's eyes. The flash of steel. The wings filling the entire sky. The collision. The sound is not steel on steel. It is thunder. The sound is not human screaming. It is the end of the world. 18-foot lances shatter against bodies, against horses, against anything in their path. The hollow wood absorbs the impact by exploding, and in that explosion, all the kinetic energy transfers to the target. Men are thrown from their horses like dolls. Not knocked off, thrown. Launched backward with such force that their armor caves inward. Some are dead before they leave their saddles. Some are dead before they hit the ground. Horses collapse with broken chests. The impact energy transfers through the lance tip into a contact area of 2 inches, 15,000 pounds per square inch of pressure. No animal can withstand it. The horses do not stumble. They drop. Their front legs fold. Their bodies slam into the earth. Their riders are trapped beneath them. The first rank of Sipahis simply ceases to exist as a coherent formation. But the hussars do not slow. The lances shatter. That is expected. That is designed. Each hussar carries a backup saber for exactly this reason. As the lance explodes, the hand drops to the sword hilt. The draw is fluid, practiced 10,000 times. The killing continues. Second rank. The hussars crash through, horses shouldering aside Ottoman mounts, sabers swinging overhead, cutting down men who have not yet recovered from the shock of the first impact. Third rank. The formation is fragmenting now. Ottoman soldiers trying to retreat but trapped by the men behind them. Officers trying to restore order but drowned out by the screaming of the wings, the roaring of the hooves, the thunder of steel. Fourth rank. The Sipahis are trying to fight back. Some of them are succeeding. Here and there, a hussar falls, lance through the throat, saber to the arm, horse stumbling and throwing its rider. But the individual victories are meaningless against the mass. The momentum of 18,000 horses does not respect individual heroism. The Sipahis last 4 minutes. Not hours. Not lengthy combat. 4 minutes from first contact to total collapse. Then something breaks. It is not physical defeat. The Sipahis still outnumber the hussars. They still have weapons. They still have training. They could theoretically reform, counterattack, fight back. But something in their minds has shattered. The wings. The sound. The impossible weight of the charge. The sight of comrades being erased rather than killed. Not wounded men falling from horses, but human beings ceasing to exist between one heartbeat and the next. The primal part of the brain that exists beneath all training, beneath all discipline, beneath all courage, beneath all faith. That part screams one word. Run. And they run. The rout begins with the cavalry and spreads like fire. The infantry sees their cavalry fleeing. These are men who have stood firm under artillery bombardment. Men who have held positions for weeks under siege conditions. Men who have never broken in 200 years of Ottoman military history. They see the Sipahis running. They see the winged demons pouring through the gap where the cavalry used to be. They see death approaching with a sound they will hear in nightmares for whatever remains of their lives. They break. Unit after unit abandons position. Officers scream orders that no one obeys. Some officers draw their swords and try to stop the fleeing men, try to kill them to make the others stand. They are trampled. The most disciplined army in the world is becoming a mob. And mobs do not fight. Mobs do not form lines. Mobs do not obey orders. Mobs flee. Only the janissaries hold. The elite slave soldiers of the Ottoman Empire. Taken as children from Christian families, raised in absolute discipline, trained to know nothing except loyalty and war. They have never broken. In 2 centuries of combat, across 3 continents, against every enemy the Ottoman Empire has ever faced, no force has ever broken a janissary formation. They form their squares. Tight ranks. Muskets raised. Bayonets fixed. Absolute discipline maintained despite the chaos surrounding them. They stand while everything around them collapses. The hussars wheel toward them. The mathematics of janissary squares assume infantry attacking infantry. They assume controlled volleys of musket fire to thin approaching enemies before contact. They assume time to reload between charges, 15 seconds minimum, enough time to deliver 3 volleys before an enemy reaches the line. The hussars do not give them 15 seconds. The hussars do not give them 5 seconds. The first wave hits the square at full gallop. Muskets fire. Some hussars fall. Perhaps 100. Perhaps fewer. But the momentum carries the horses into the formation, through the formation, over the formation. Men are trampled beneath hooves. Men are cut down by sabers. Men are simply knocked aside by the mass of horseflesh crashing through their ranks. The square shatters. The Janissaries do not flee. They cannot flee. Retreat is not in their training. Their minds do not contain the concept. They have been raised from childhood to stand and fight until victory or death. They die in place. Every single one of them. Fighting until the sabers take them, until the horses trample them, until there is nothing left to fight with or for. But they die. And with their death, Ottoman resistance ceases. Kara Mustafa Pasha watches his world end. The cavalry, routed. 20,000 Sipahis scattered across the countryside, their cohesion destroyed, their courage broken. The infantry, fleeing. Entire divisions abandoning their positions, throwing down their weapons, running for the southern roads. The Janissaries, destroyed. The elite force that has never broken. The invincible formation, annihilated. The army he spent 2 years building, the largest Ottoman force ever assembled for a single campaign, the force that was supposed to carry Ottoman banners to Rome, to Paris, to the Atlantic coast, is dissolving in an afternoon. His mathematics were perfect. His logistics were perfect. His intelligence was perfect. And none of it matters. He grabs his standard. He runs for his horse. He leaves behind his treasure, chests of gold, crates of jewels, gifts meant for the Sultan. He leaves behind his maps, his intelligence reports, his plans for the conquest of Germany. He leaves behind his jeweled tent, worth more than most European palaces. He abandons everything except his life and flees south with whatever bodyguards can keep pace. Behind him, 80,000 soldiers scatter to the winds. The supply train, months of accumulated provisions, is burning or being captured. The artillery, hundreds of bronze cannons, is falling into Christian hands. 15,000 Ottoman soldiers lie dead on the field. The Ottoman dream of European conquest dies on a September afternoon, killed by 3,000 men with feathers on their backs. At sunset, the gates of Vienna open. Not for Ottoman conquerors. For Polish knights. Jan Sobieski rides through streets lined with ghosts. These are not people. Not anymore. They are what remains after 8 weeks of starvation, disease, and terror. Hollow eyes in sunken faces. Skin stretched over bones. Clothes hanging on frames that have lost half their weight. They weep. They fall to their knees. They reach for the horses with skeletal hands, touching the armor, touching the wings, trying to confirm that this is real. Some of them cannot believe it. Some of them have lost the capacity for hope. They stare at the hussars and see hallucinations, the final dreams of starving minds. But the bread is real. The water is real. The knights riding through the gates are real. Vienna has survived. Starhemberg waits in the cathedral square. He stands straight despite exhaustion. He has not slept more than 2 hours at a stretch in 8 weeks. He has lost 30 pounds. His uniform hangs on him like a shroud. His eyes are hollow. But he stands. He has held. He has not surrendered. He has not opened the gates. The two men meet. Sobieski and Starhemberg. The knight who rode 500 miles to fight, and the soldier who stood 60 days to die. They do not embrace. Neither man is the type. They clasp forearms. Warriors greeting. The grip of men who understand what the other has endured without needing words. "You came," Starhemberg says. His voice cracks. "God sent me," Sobieski answers. "I merely steered the horse." The king kneels before the altar of St. Stephen's Cathedral. He is covered in dust, blood, and the residue of hours of killing. His saber has not been cleaned. The blade is still red. His armor is dented in 3 places from blows he does not remember receiving. He kneels because his legs are shaking. He prays because there is nothing left to do except give thanks. Veni, vidi, Deus visit. I came. I saw. God conquered. Not we conquered. Not I conquered. Not Poland conquered. God. Because Sobieski understands what some men forget in the fever of victory. Courage is a gift. Strength is borrowed. When the impossible becomes possible, it is not by human hands alone. The aftermath unfolds faster than the siege. Within 2 years, the Austrians recapture Buda, the Hungarian capital that has flown Ottoman flags for 145 years. The city that generations of Hungarian children have only known as Ottoman becomes Christian again. Within 4 years, they take Belgrade. The gateway that opened the road to Vienna closes. Within 15 years, the Treaty of Karlowitz forces the Ottomans to surrender Hungary, Transylvania, Slavonia, and most of their European conquests. Territories the Ottoman Empire held for a century and a half are signed away with the stroke of a pen. The tide that seemed unstoppable reverses course and never recovers. The Ottoman Empire that dreamed of reaching Rome spends the next 2 centuries slowly dying. Territory bleeds away decade after decade. The army that once terrified Europe becomes a military joke, the sick man of Europe, diplomats will eventually call it. The treasury that once held the wealth of 3 continents empties. By 1918, in the fires of the First World War, the empire finally collapses entirely. The last sultan flees Constantinople on a British warship. The 1,000-year dream of a universal Islamic empire ends not with glory but with humiliation. 235 years of decline. All beginning on September 12, 1683. All because 3,000 men with wings on their backs rode down a mountain. Kara Mustafa does not survive his failure. Sultan Mehmed IV summons him to Belgrade. Not for court-martial. Not for explanation. Not for second chances. For execution. The Grand Vizier who trusted mathematics dies strangled by a silk cord, the traditional method for high Ottoman officials. The executioner takes his time. The Sultan has ordered that the death be slow. It takes 4 minutes. The silk tightens slowly. The breath comes shorter and shorter. The eyes bulge. The face turns purple. The legs kick. Then still. His last words are not recorded in official documents. But witnesses claim he asked one question before the cord tightened. How? The mathematics were perfect. How? The answer dies with him. But we know. Some forces cannot be calculated. Jan Sobieski returns home a hero. The savior of Vienna. The greatest cavalry commander since Hannibal. The king who rode 500 miles to rescue a civilization that did not deserve to be rescued. The world should be grateful. The world is not. Emperor Leopold I never properly acknowledges his debt. The Austrian court treats Sobieski as a useful mercenary, not a savior. The jewels he pawned to fund the campaign are never repaid. The alliance of Christian kingdoms that the Pope dreamed of never materializes. Within months, the same European powers that barely united against the Ottomans return to their squabbles. France continues its schemes. Protestant states continue their grievances. Austria continues its arrogance. Sobieski spends his remaining years fighting more wars, trying to complete the destruction of Ottoman power, watching helplessly as European politics waste every opportunity his victory created. He dies in 1696, 13 years after Vienna, worn out, disappointed, bitter in ways he would never admit publicly. The world he saved already forgetting his name. Poland spends the next century tearing itself apart. Civil conflicts, noble rebellions, foreign interference. The same fragmentation that nearly destroyed Europe repeats itself on Polish soil. By 1795, barely a century after Vienna, Poland ceases to exist as a sovereign nation. Partition between Russia, Prussia, and Austria. The same Austria that Sobieski died saving. The Austria that never sent help when Poland needed it. The Austria that allowed Polish territory to be carved up without lifting a finger. Today, Vienna stands. Walk through its streets and you will find small monuments to September 12, 1683. Plaques on walls. Names on street signs. A church on Kahlenberg with a plaque commemorating where the charge began. Most tourists pass without stopping. Most locals have forgotten the details. The day that saved their city, their culture, their existence, reduced to a historical footnote that interrupts the walk to the coffee shop. But here is what the forgetting obscures. Vienna almost fell. Not because the Ottomans were invincible. Because Europe was divided. The religious wars. The political rivalries. The short-sighted selfishness of kings who would rather watch their neighbors burn than face a common enemy together. That is what brought Europe to the brink. The Hussars did not save Vienna because they were numerous. They were outnumbered 27-1. The Hussars did not save Vienna because they were technologically superior. The Ottomans had better artillery, better logistics, better engineers. The Hussars saved Vienna because they were willing. Because one 60-year-old king looked at impossible odds and said, "God requires this of me." Because 4,000 starving defenders looked at certain death and said, "We will not open the gates." Because sometimes, rarely, unpredictably, against all mathematics, faith weighs more than numbers. The lesson is not that 3,000 knights can defeat 80,000 soldiers. That remains impossible by any rational calculation. The mathematics have not changed. The physics have not changed. 3,000 is still far less than 80,000. The lesson is that impossible mathematics bow before impossible will. That when good men stop calculating costs and simply pay them, the equations shatter. That faith, unity, and courage, the things comfortable civilizations forget how to practice, can still turn the tide of history. Against all reason. Against all odds. Against the mathematics of war and the logic of despair. Europe stood. Because on one September afternoon, 3,000 winged knights rode into legend and carried the weight of civilization on their backs. And the thunder they made echoes still. I have a question for you. And I want you to answer honestly. Not what sounds brave, but what you actually believe about yourself. If you had been in Vienna that September, starving, dying, watching the walls collapse around you, knowing mathematically that rescue could not arrive in time, would you have stayed? Or would you have run? There is no shame in honesty. Most people would have run. Most people would have calculated the odds and made the rational decision. Most people would have looked at the mathematics and surrendered to them. But some would have stayed. Some would have stood on those crumbling walls and refused to yield. Some would have looked at impossible odds and said, "Not today. Not this city. Not while I still breathe." Which one are you? Leave your answer in the comments. Be honest with yourself. And if this story mattered to you, if you learned something, if you felt something, if you want others to know what happened on that mountain, then share it. Send it to someone who needs to hear it. Hit subscribe so you are here when the next story arrives. Because history is not dead. History is a warning. And warnings only work if we remember them. The thunder of the Hussars still echoes. The question is whether we still have ears to hear it. Whether we still have the courage to answer when civilization calls. Whether we have forgotten what our ancestors knew, that some things are worth dying for, and that the mathematics of survival are not the only mathematics that matter. September 12, 1683. The day mathematics bowed to faith. Never forget.